find a good way to end it.
What's up guys, it's Cody with 3 Printing Technology. For this video, we're going to be building the Prusa Mk3 3 printers E-axis. The E-axis consists of the hot end, basically, the heatsink, nozzle, heater block, filament sensor, pinder probe, part fan, heatsink fan, all that type of stuff. So here is where we are at with the Mk3 build. I have the display on, got the bed in stock, power supplies on, 32-bit board is mounted. There's the bed, there's the frame, here's the E-axis which we're going to be focusing on for this video. You will see the build process of this in the next video, since I want to include that with the bed, around the keyboards and firmware stuff. So my E-axis is going to be a little bit different than the normal stock Prusa E-axis. Few things: I have a 3-passion Nova hot end instead of the traditional E3D V6 hot end. I like this design better because it has the thermistor and heater cartridges mounted in a vertical position instead of horizontal, because I went through so many of the horizontal thermistors on my Mk2S because it's positioned weird. Not sure they didn't do it to begin with, but there was that, and then it has a much faster print speed, or it's according to the website it does. So I wanted to test that out as well. Okay, so here's some of the parts laid out. I went ahead and test fit some of these parts before I started this build on video. Make sure I got everything. There are a few things that need to work out, but here's what we got so far. We got some of the 3 print pieces. Also, this is different from a traditional stock Prusa Mk3 hot end. One, I have a Nova hot end versus having an E3D V6 hot end. One reason is I like the vertical thermistor cartridges better, and I've heard some good things about the Nova hot end. And I'm having to figure out the fan shroud mount piece because it's different as well. But yeah, so I got the stepper motor, some of the 3 print pieces, the Nova hot end. That's really all the major components attached to it, here's the extruder body piece. So for the first step, this build, we want to start with the extruder body piece, this green piece, and the printer adapter, and the ravel. No, mine doesn't look that great, but it functions good, but it works. May reprint it later on once I get the hot end built and the printer tested, but those are the 3 pieces I want to start with right now. So for this step, we're going to need a few of the hardware items. Going to need an M310 screw, an M318 screw, I believe the M310 screw will be here. I need an M318 screw, which will probably be these 2 right here. We'll also need 2 magnets, 120 by 6 by 2, 110 by 6 by 2, a 7mm ball for the filament sensor, 2 square nuts, 1 here, and the other is down here, 2 hex nuts, and I believe that's it for this step. Alright, so here's the next few steps. We're going to put the 2 magnets in here together, and we'll make sure the magnet pushes out instead of pushes in, so you know that's correct. And then the M310 screws are gonna go right here, but I'm gonna decide to skip that because it's gonna go into the 3 printed hole. There's no hex nut or scroll nut holding it in place. And so once you put the extruder motor cover piece on top of it, it should stay in place anyways. So I'm gonna skip that step. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back and put one into it. But you can decide if you want to do the same way or add the screw. It's up to you. But now we also want to put the stainless steel ball into place with the printer adapter piece. This is how it should be positioned. You can see the 2 holes on the outside, the ball is on the left side. And we're going to put the M318 screw nut in place for the pin probe mount later on. So here's the one I have. For this next step, I want to get the extruder motor plate. This black piece right here with the extruder motor. And we need 2 M310 screws, as you can see right here, to mount the motor to the plate. And then you'll also need the 2 Bondtech gears, the 2 bearings, and the shaft for them. And we'll get the Bondtech gear with the set screw, and we'll prep it to go on to the motor shaft. Alright, so now that we have the Bondtech gear set, we got the one gear without a set screw. This one's with a set screw. Then we got one without one. This one also has 2 bearing pieces like this inside of it, and a shaft. And so for this step we need these pieces. We need the motor plate and the 2 M310 screws. I want to go ahead and attach the M310 screws to the motor, and then prep the Bondtech gears to be attached to the motor as well. For this next step, I'm going to get the gear with the set screw in it. Let's see. Right here. And we're going to attach it to the motor. We'll make sure the smaller side is facing downwards on the motor, facing towards the motor. And I want to attach the side with the gear onto the flat side of the motor, so like this here. Go ahead and loosen the screw. So right now, before we attach the gear to the shaft completely, we'll make sure the groove in the gear is lined up with the filament slot on the 3 printed piece. So that way the filament feeds straight into the 3 print piece through the gear and into the hot end. And then once that's done, we can tighten the set screw in place. So next step, I'm going to get this piece right here. This would be this piece will look different on the E3D version. Since I'm using the Nova, it's going to be different. But we want to get a square nut and slide it in at the very top up here. So that way this fan support will connect to it. And then we'll get 2 M310 screws and 2 M340 screws along with the hot end, and get ready for the next step. Okay, so next step, I want to get this piece right here, the extrude body, and get the 2 M310 screws and slide into these 2 holes. And then we're going to, and then we'll put it together like this. We'll make sure the hot ends in the correct alignment before we move on to the next step. And then once it is, we'll tighten the 2 M340 screws and these 2 holes right here. And these will be the screws that will be going through the back side and connecting with the hex nuts on the other side. So the next step is going to be the x-axis carriage, which is, I believe, this piece right here on the original stock Prusa. Now we need this piece. Prusa uses a different name. I would have called it the x-axis carriage. We need 4 thin nuts and 2 hex nuts and the filament sensor cable. Again, like I said, this is the 2.5S cable. I'll switch out once the Mk3 cables arrive. But here's what we got now. So we're going to be working on this back side. Okay, so for this next step, we're going to be focusing primarily on this piece. Want to get the 2 hex nuts and insert them into these 2 holes, and then the 4 thin nuts will have 2 right here, 1 right here, and the last one will be right here. So 2, 1, 1. Alright, so here's what we have. The 4 thin nuts, 1, 2, 3, 4. The 2 hex nuts. So next is to get the sensor cable. And I believe it's this end one to get. And run it through the back side. Like this. So this end will plug into the sensor piece, and this end will go to the 32-bit board. So now we can unwind the motor cable for this next step. And want to prep the cable to mount to the E-carriage. So you want to put the motor cable under this piece right here. And yeah, it's pretty much it for that piece. Then taking the E-axis carriage, want to run these 2 M310 screws on the bottom with the 2 hex nuts we just inserted. I believe we have. So I ended up taking the fan off and I got the pieces in place. So this is what we have. We have the E-axis carriage piece. The cable's running through it like it's supposed to. The 2 sensor cable, got the motor cable and sensor cable running through the slots. And the 2 M310 screws, screw them to place. So now we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so this is the end that's supposed to be on the top. The 3-prong end right here. And this is the end that's going to go to the 32-bit board. So set this piece to the side. And next we need the sensor piece. A M2 8 screw. And a M3 40 screw. So the M2 8 screw and the filament sensor is going to go on top. The M3 40 screw is going to go through the side, connect to the motor, and then this piece connects to the prongs on this one right here. Alright, so here's the next steps we can do. We can insert the remaining Bondtech gear into the extruder outer piece. So I want this side to be facing us. I want to put the bigger side on the left with the teeth on it, and the filament side on the right, so that it's aligned properly when we insert it into the rest of the hot end. And we want to insert the two bearings and shaft into the gear piece. Also, we need 2 3/4 screws and a extruder spring, but I don't have any in right at this moment, so I'll add that on when it gets here. So this is what we should have now. We should have the adder printed piece and the contact gear assembled, and it should be facing in this orientation with the bigger part of the gears facing this way. And again, we got the one of the M3/4 screws mounted on this side, which will connect to the printed adder piece. If I had the spring piece, which I don't right now, it will go into this end of the screw. And the next step, we're going to be adding the other M3/4 screw into this slot right here for the hinge of the printed adder piece. One more thing to note on the adder printed piece, on the Mk2S series printers, there was a very thin plastic washer that would go on one side of the, on this right here. It would go on this side between the motor and the print piece. But I've looked in the instructions and I don't see any mention of the plastic washer. So I guess in the Mk3 series it's skipping that. But if I do find it, I'll add it to this video or the electronics testing video. But anyways, now we can move on to the filament sensor. We're going to get M310 screw and the filament sensor cover and attach it to the hot end. Then I think the last two steps is the part fan and the pin probe. Okay, so here's what it should look like with the filament sensor in place, but there's not a hex nut or anything in the screw hole, so it's not going to stay. I'm not sure why Prusa designs it this way, but that's how they do design it. So I'll probably end up taking mine off and not using the filament sensor for a while, or using the aftermarket one that's already enclosed by itself. And for the next step is going to be the part fan, but like I said, I don't have one yet. But if you're just mounting the traditional part fan, you'll need two M320 screws and two hex nuts, one on this bottom end right here and one for the top end. And you'll need an M310 screw to mount the part fan holder. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and move to the next step, which is going to be mounting the pin probe. Alright, so here's the final step. I have the pin probe installed. So the one I ordered from 3proimport.com comes with some nuts and washers. I decided to try this out, and then just loop the cable behind it and out through this slot right here. Once I get the part fan, I'll put the cable for it behind the pin probe cable. But overall, this is it for this build. Like I said, I'm still missing a few parts, like the part fan, adder spring. Decided not to use that piece. And the Mk3 sensor. This is a Mk2 sensor I'm borrowing from a Mk 2.5 upgrade that I've been putting off. But overall, it's essentially it for this build. So the next video you can expect for the Mk3 build will be the attaching this to the x-axis, doing one or two more steps to the x-axis, going over the 32-bit board connections, testing the power supply, installing firmware, and hopefully doing a test print. Alright, so we're going to stop here on the instructions. So if you've been following along with the instructions on Prusa's website, you will know that there's quite a bit more instructions left in their Hotend build. And this was really one of the reasons that I was trying to build my own X carriage with the X carriage. Apart from making it easier to assemble and disassemble, I don't think the cable connections should be considered part of the Hotend build. You should be able to finish the Hotend and then just snap it into place or bolt it onto the X-axis carriage, and then just consider connecting the cables as part of the electronics build. So that's where I'm going to end the video here after the Penda probe. And then once I get all the remaining parts I need for the Hotend and a few other things, we'll finish the rest of Prusa's E-axis assembly with the control board and power supply and first test and all that stuff. So that's going to wrap up the video for this week. If I experienced today's videos first, make sure to click subscribe and I'll see you guys next time.